Greetings, everyone. We'll get started here in a few minutes. Want to give everyone a chance to jump on that wants to jump on and kind of dive into what's been going on the flats. What's up, guys? All right. We'll get started here in a couple of minutes. Just give everyone a chance to jump on that wants to jump on. I'll load up our questions and then we can take some in the chat too. Ba, 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 ba. So I'd say the first thing that someone asked is a question that I don't know um, I'm not grasping. It's, in your opinion, best of developing talent on both sides of the ball. I'm going to guess that maybe they mean the coaches, like who's going to develop uh, the best coaches on either side of the ball. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm not sure what that person could be, a guy or a girl, was aiming for with that one. Let's see. We'll come back to that one. Will Josh Pastner be fired, in your opinion? Always a classic from GT21. I have no idea what's going to happen with Josh Pastner. I would be shocked if anything were to happen to him this year. Just the realities of financials and everything else. I think that would be interesting. Does Glenn Schumann go to Alabama? That's a hot topic, right? The conspiracy theorist and the Bama fans want Jeremy Pruitt. If they can somehow make that work with NCAA, I don't know um, that's going to be a thing or not, but they're trying to, I guess, figure it out. If anyone can get Jeremy Pruitt cleared from his show cause to coach again in the NCAA, it would be Nick Saban. My thought has been all along that he would be an analyst before he'd be a defensive coordinator. But I think there are workarounds. You could make him the defensive coordinator, not allow him to recruit, a lot of stuff. Schumann's interesting because he's been with Kirby forever. Does he jump to go home to Alabama? Does he want to carve out his own thing away from Kirby and thinks that'll get him to being head coach? Those are probably that would be the inner monologue that I would have if I were Glenn Schumann. Otherwise, I would imagine that it's going to be that would be a weird decision to jump right now, given kind of what's going on at UGA. But we'll see. Is the Bama site celebrating the loss of Bill O'Brien? I was saddened by the news. Billy O'Brien, polarizing figure for Alabama fans. You know, certainly coming after Lane Kiffin and Sark and the guys, some of the guys that Saban had as offensive coordinator, was not a splashy guy. He's an NFL guy, and that's the thing I kept trying to tell everybody during the coaching search with Bill O'Brien too. Bill O'Brien left college football. He was at a good job at Penn State and intentionally left to go to the NFL because he wanted a better opportunity for himself, right? And you only do that if you really want to be in that world, right? You're not interested in recruiting and you want to be a pro guy. And Bill O'Brien's a pro guy at the end of the day. He enjoys that. He wanted to be an NFL guy, and he was not looking to go to Georgia Tech or anywhere else to be a head coach unless it was just a slam dunk job. And if he couldn't find the NFL path, he went to the Nick Saban rehab school of coaches and rehabbed himself for a couple of years, and he got back in the NFL. He's with the Patriots. As a Patriots fan, I'm not sure what to think of Bill O'Brien as an NFL OC. I didn't study the Texans that much when he was the head coach. Obviously, he was wearing too many hats there, but it's Bama fans are excited unless they hire an OC they don't like, and then they won't be excited. That's where that is at. For all the recent trashing of our basketball roster, Miles and Debo were legitimate quality recruits. If they could put the ball in the basket at anything resembling a normal percentage, we would be competing well against most of our opponents. What the heck is going on with their shooting? Is it mental now? My personal opinion, it's a mental thing. Like when you watch the players, they've just lost confidence. The example I talked about when I think about this is I think it was Jose's sophomore year. He missed like 30 something straight threes, right? And it was totally a mental, it was not physical. There was no, real reason as to why. He just got ice cold. It got in his head, and then it just perpetuated itself. And for the basketball team this season, they have guys who've been consistent shooters in their career, in their brief careers, and now they're suddenly stone cold, and that makes no sense. And I think it's frustration and guys not getting what they expect on the field. Miles Kelly getting a little trigger happy, a little too many turnovers. I think it's difficult. Is Debo Coleman the Jeff Sims of basketball? No, Debo Coleman is like very different. I think Debo just is, to me, my honest opinion about it is I don't know that the system is the best fit for him and the way it's being run right now. He's an undersized. He's playing an undersized small forward position, basically, where he has a dude guarding him that has 3 inches on him most games. Right? He's sort of a tweener between a shooting guard and a small forward, and he needs to be either in a space system or with a big man that can pass the ball really well. If you're going to run Josh's thing, they don't have either of those right now, so I think that really kills Debo's ability to go to the bucket. And when he's not going to the bucket, I think it impacts his shot when he's just a spot up shooter. He's like a volume. He's always been to me like a volume shot guy. Like that, I think if he gets like his consistent touches and you get him going, he can ramp up and be a 30-point guy in a game. He's just not that right now. Has Josh lost the locker room? Do the guys want to keep pushing for him? This is a hard work they put in for no results. Would seem to be hard to stay committed to the process. No, the guys are they're upset, they're pissed off, they're mad at themselves. Like we were down in the locker room after the game on for away games. We go down and we see all the kids like right after a game, and they're all pissed. Like they're upset with themselves, they're frustrated. Like when you talk to them, you can tell that they feel like they're not playing at the level they should be playing at, and they're very frustrated. And I think that is a function of what's going on with the team right now. It is very much between the ears. This is a team that has shown the ability to play at a higher level. It beat Georgia pretty soundly, beat Miami. Like that wasn't the aberration. That's how they should be playing consistently, and they're not. And that's where Josh is frustrated, his staff's frustrated, the players are frustrated because these guys can shoot the basketball and they're just not. And there's nothing you can do to fix that, like with the personnel and the way this team's built right now. They don't have a Josh Okogie to go get buckets. They don't have a Moses Wright to dump into the post that can score consistently. Jalen Moore is, Moses Wright that sophomore year right now. Like he's probably a little bit better than Moses was in year 2, but he's not consistent enough where you can just dump the ball to him and he can go get you a bucket. And he's a little bit smaller too. So like the pieces are not right. And that's on Josh for picking them. It's on Georgia Tech too, for not giving him the resources that he needed to put together the pieces that make sense, if that makes sense to you guys. I mean, to me, I think the majority of their struggles are mental right now. They're still playing hard on defense. Held Clemson to 72 the other night, which is not bad considering how stone cold they were. and that there was no real pressure on Clemson in that game to push it at all. Debo being effed up by the nonsense system and should be positioned early career like BJ or Anthony Morrow. I mean, I can't speak to BJ or Anthony; that was before my time. I just say that the way they're playing right now is not helping Debo, and the inconsistencies inside are really kind of a struggle. Let's see what else we got here. Maybe a Russell question, but the vibe from high school coaches from Brent Key compared to Collins. I haven't talked to a lot of high school coaches yet about Brent. Obviously, right now, sort of the first real time he's spending a lot of time out. When they go out in December, a lot of that is about them trying to close classes and then just going to a lot of places and shaking hands and trying to maximize that time, seeing guys that they're trying to close and things like that. Now is a little bit more of a broader brush where you're going in the helicopter and you're going in the plane to go visit different places across the state and get your brand out there. And Brett's being received really well from the little bits I've gotten here. I think coaches like him. I think everyone respects Brent, which is a big thing right now. I think that whether Jeff was respected or not, it's hard to, I think he was. I think he lost some of it with the way the team played. And I think that people just respect Brent. And so it's a little bit of a different animal for him on the road. 1 second. Is Pastner's defense relying on a Princeton-style offense, or can he run something more modern? I feel like his offense is the triple option of basketball. I would go further. It's almost like the wishbone. It's like not even like the triple option. Like it's like more even niche than that in some ways at Princeton. No, it has nothing to do with the defense they play. They play zone. Josh at one point was talking about like going positionless and all this. I forget what year that was. Maybe it was before the COVID season or in the middle of like 2019-20 maybe. They were going to play like the Warriors and all this stuff, and then that all kind of like evaporated real quick, and they went back into the Princeton. And I don't know, like I had a lot of conversations with a guy about the Princeton thing. I thought it made no sense when I saw, to me, like as an outside person, when I looked at the roster, using the elbow action, which is the thing you all get pissed about, rightly so, I think, is just made no sense. Like I was like, you got to just throw that away. It's the equivalent right now of the defensive end covering the wheel route in football, like at the end of last season for Georgia Tech, right? Like when people see that, they're literally groaning, like when they throw it into Rodney and then guys like Jordan Mecca Jordan is a great defensive basketball player. He's not a great offensive player still, and he has no idea what to do when he gets that ball. He's like a turnover waiting to happen. Curl can't run that. Javon Franklin's too small. Like it just doesn't make any damn sense to me. Like I don't know why they keep running it. Like Ken and I have some pretty funny conversations in the press box about this. Watching the game, we had a pretty funny back and forth during the Clemson game where we were joking about leaving at that point. But it's just it's weird. What question should we be asking about the football changes? I would say the one thing that no one's talked about is expectations and like what the expectation levels are like, right? Like so with Jeff, you had this whole mantra of no competition is king, and the what was the other one? The no entitlement program, which seemed to be the complete opposite in some ways. I think Brent's like really demanding on the kids and what they expect, and like that harkens back to Paul Johnson and other coaches that I know that have been successful. And Nick Saban, the guy, and George O'Leary, I'm sure was like this. I didn't cover him, but most coaches that are successful are really demanding. There are very few guys that run like what Bobby Bowden did, where it was a little bit of a player thing that was real loose, and that most programs are pretty buttoned down, and Brent wants the players to be leaders, but he also this is these are your responsibilities. These are the things I expect from you. I expect you guys to go to class, take care of things, stay out of trouble, do your job, do your work harder than you think you can, like put in 100% every day. And that's the level of expectation, and it goes across the board through his staff, and that's why he made the staff changes he made too. Like he was looking for optimizing every position, and like I said, when we talked about Brett Key being a possibility, Brett Key would fire his brother if he had one. I don't know if he has, or actually I've never spoken to him about that, but if he thought it would he could hire somebody better and improve the team. And that's the approach he's taking. That's the mantra to the kids. Like, look, you got to earn your spot every day. And so that's a lot different. I think that he he also, like you, this one is in the thing. They did a lot more good on good, a lot more hitting. They were just more physical in practice, and that showed up on the field too. For the last, really, I would say even in the Paul's last game, in the bowl game, for whatever reason, Georgia Tech just looked kind of soft, right? Like they got pushed around at the line of scrimmage. You were overmatched, but it's also a different thing getting pushed around. And that's the big thing I think he wants to fix. And I think he sees that 100% um, before it gets any further. Do you think letting go of you think letting go would have Larry? Do I think letting Larry Knight go is fair? Dude, it's a business. It's a business. I could be let go tomorrow from my job. You could be let go from your job tomorrow. We all work day to day, even if you have a contract. All the contract gives you is a buyout or whatever. And so um, it's Brent's job to figure out what his team needs, right? Like, and I think that, you know, I like Larry Knight a lot. We had a great relationship. He's a great dude. I hope he does really well. I hope he becomes a head coach one day. But for whatever reason, Brent thought that making that change made more sense. He brought Marco back, who he's very close to, who is really well regarded and a really strong recruiter. I would say the big thing to me that stood out this last cycle was the struggles with the defensive line recruiting. And there can be a lot of pieces to that, but they whiffed really hard on the defensive line and were like scrambling and trying to find gems, which I think they did, but it's not what you would expect in year 4 of your program, of having a staff in place that and having guys that have been around for a long time in the South to be scrambling on the back foot and signing 2-star guys. And I think all of those things kind of came together. And Larry's a great dude, and I think he did a good job coaching those guys. I think David Turner's a great coach. I'm just not sure David Turner's giving you anything on the recruiting front, and I think that's what ultimately probably ended his tenure too. But I think that that's something. But Larry Knight going to Toledo, it's all about who you know and how you and what the jobs are that are open and how you're viewed. And you know, I think it's a little bit telling that some people who've left have been struggled to find on the field jobs. If you look at like Pop or Nate Burton or um, Pat Node on the last cycle, those guys have all kind of had to go, and the ones who were successful bolted out, like Tashard or Marco, or had value. It's always about market and opportunity, and it may have just been a case with for Larry that there was no job open that made sense for him, and he wanted to be on the field and didn't want to be an analyst for a year or wait and see what happens with NFL changes and who goes to the pros and those kind of things. I really think that Winky has earned Key's respect. Every Key interview, he mentions him as a true Winky built the plan for the last 2 games and called the plays. Chip Long says it is not. I will go with Chip Long's what Chip Long said, that he was calling the plays. I didn't see who was calling the plays, so I don't know if Chris Winkie was calling the plays in the last 2 games or not. That's obviously been a hot rumor. Joe Hamilton said it on his show. Chip called me to refute it. Now, Chip did say that Chris was involved with game plan, but it's different calling the game on a Saturday than it is coming up with a plan. So I don't know. It's not a conversation I've had with Chris Winkie or Brent Key. It's not something I give enough of a crap to burn that conversation, because that could be an awkward conversation. It's something I'll probably find out eventually, and if I do, maybe I'll let you guys know. What current coaches on the football team do you think would be higher up? What current coaches on the football team do you think higher up P5 teams would like to have at the same position or better? Everything's relative to system and who you know, and college football is like entirely based on who you know and your connections and your networking. That's like 90% of the jobs. There are a few people. Willie Fritz is one of the few people I know that hires people blindly off of he like Chip Long and then Alex Atkins, who's his OC now. Those were like search firm finds. He's a guy that believes in that stuff. Most guys I know go through their networking. That's how Bill O'Brien ended up with Alabama. Nick Saban, Bill Belichick said, "Hey, you should give Bill a shot. He needs a job." Blah blah blah. Then he hires him. Ted Roof got pushed on Paul Johnson. So sometimes they don't work out. And sometimes you find great guys that way too. And I think Jason Seymour is a guy that was through sort of the Jeff Collins network and has turned out to be a pretty good coach. So you just don't know. But I don't know what would it be. I'm not here to evaluate Chip Long's game calling. Like, you guys can debate that all you want. Like, Chip's a friend of mine. I'm not going to disparage him for something that I'm not even sure the validity of it. And I understand that you guys want some sizzle, but that's not how I roll. Like, do we have a hot and up and coming coach like Tashard Choice, where USC and Texas wanted him? Someone you see being difficult to retain. I mean, obviously, with Buster, that'll be interesting to see what it is. Coach Crawford, the wide receivers coach, Coach McKenzie. Some of those guys are young and up and coming coaches. Kevin Shearer is a guy who's had some pretty high level jobs. Marco obviously already made that jump once to go to Michigan State. So there are guys that definitely have some of that. There are some guys that say, that have that. Thacker is one that's kind of interesting to see if he has another good year, kind of what if he starts to have some market value and interest. And if that was all Jeff Collins meddling that led him to struggle as a defensive coordinator. I'm heard from a source that the Stockton brothers can end up GT. When guys go in the portal, go in the portal. I will say with quarterbacks, if you don't win the job, and you haven't burned your transfer year, the reality is of how often teams even hold on to that number 2 quarterback or the guy who lost the competition is so low. So I think that obviously it's something Georgia's going to be watching, and I would imagine he would be a hot commodity if Gunner's on the market, and how that relates to the rest of that, I don't know. But I mean, that's one of those things. Like any one of those guys, whoever the odd man is out at Georgia, I would imagine that's going to be a fight that Kirby Smart's taken to keep those guys in play. And they've done a decent enough job with it the last few years, especially with Stetson winning the job there. I imagine that, that's, the thing that they're going to have to figure out. That's going to be their biggest question is, do you go chips in on one guy and make that your guy and moving ahead now that you have an open quarterback competition again? So, I'll be curious to see how that plays out. Do you feel like Josh is a guy that will go out and try to get money for the program? Josh Pastner, NIL money. That was my suggestion to him in personal conversations, was like, look, man, if you need this, go get it. That's what Brent Key did. And he's been successful at it. Bruce with the golf program. Bruce Hepler has raised all of his money throughout his entire time. He's completely, basically self-funded golf program that operates at an extremely high level. And, Danny Hall's done a nice job of raising money. Like, sometimes you got to do that. And at a place like Georgia Tech, if you're not getting what you need, my whole thing in this is it's about your own survival too. So he needs to do whatever's best for Josh. If he needs something to win, he needs to figure out how to get it. Don't be Will Wade and not, allegedly your own bag man, but go out and find what you need to get things done. And Josh very much followed the thing that people get pissed about is how they've handled a lot of this stuff. It was directly the marching orders he got from Mike Babinski and Todd Stansbury about how to recruit, what they were looking for, to not play the game so to speak, to run a clean program. That's why he still has a job right now. Because if he had been doing anything remotely shady, he would have been fired when all of the stuff happened with Wendell Carter and wasting their time on a recruit that they had no shot at. So, yeah, that's the thing. I'm not going to dive into. Somebody asked me about Rara Thomas, and I have no idea what the hell's going on over there. I'm the amount of stupid stuff I saw in college at UGA, um, and go on in dorms and private lives and stuff when you have 18 to 23, 24-year-old people living as pretend adults, basically. The amount of drama and shit, I can't even imagine what it's like now with Instagram. We didn't have any of that stuff. We had the last few years I was in school, we had the like bare minimum of Facebook starting up, and there was drama. Like, there are all kinds of drama stories I can't even tell on here. Stuff that happened to some of my like girlfriend's friends and stuff, like with guys and doing shady stuff. So I'm not getting into that. That's their business. I don't know enough or care enough about it. I found it ironic that happened, but that was about the end of it. Pastner has a history of not pounding the table for resources, even if it entails running a clean program. There are a lot of things that Josh should have been asking for. Josh is a very nice guy, and most really successful basketball coaches I know are not like as nice as Josh is, and maybe that's what's killing him. Obviously, that whole Ron Bell situation came about because of how nice of a guy Josh is and how open he is to people, and it's been great for me to deal with. I really like Josh. My wife, ironically, like even has like opinions about Josh, who doesn't follow any sports stuff because she's been around enough phone calls and stuff and heard Josh talk and whatever and been involved in conversations that um she feels bad for the guy. And I think that he knows basketball. I don't think he's a great offensive coach, but that's where I get into the mindset of if you're Jay Batt, maybe you tell him to go hire an offensive coordinator. Some other basketball coaches have done that. I think if Brian Gregory had done that, he would have survived for a while at Georgia Tech. I don't think there was anything wrong with what they were doing defensively. Their offense was just horrid, and he was allergic to recruiting guys who could shoot the basketball. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Being around both Collins and Passner every day, do you see the same vibe from Passner like Collins? A few weeks before he was let go, dead man walking vibes. Was it odd? There, Josh is very unlikely to get fired. I don't understand. Like, it is a straight financial decision at this point. Like, even if you thought he sucked, you have the second youngest team in the ACC, I think, this year, and you have talent there, and you've not given the guy comparable weapons to most of what the league has. So it would be hypocritical, in my opinion, at that point to fire Josh, and it would be viewed that way by other coaches. Um, And no, I don't get the dead man walking vibes. That's not how Josh rolls, anyways. He's not that kind of person. Like he still thinks they're going to go on a run and win like 9, 10 games in the ACC. Like that's just how he is. Um, would you say GT is more buttoned down than UGA when it comes to kids being goofy, dumb? I think GT fans pride themselves on GT kids are more refined. Depends, man. Glenn Rice Jr. had a lot of things going on in his personal life, as you found out when he became a pro, right? Like not all the it's different when you're in a college town. Everything gets amplified and gets put out there a lot easier. That I would say is something that's a huge difference. I've noticed covering Georgia to covering Georgia Tech. Um, people can get away with things that maybe would don't get found out by the media or whatever. Like, so there are kids doing dumb things. There always have been, and there always will be. Whether you're at Georgia, Georgia Tech, Georgia State, Kennesaw State, Georgia Southern, whatever. The amount of them. I mean, maybe the academic hills you got to climb to go to Georgia Tech attract a different kind of person. A lot of the guys that I dealt with in my time at Georgia were there to major in football, right? Like didn't care about the academic piece, and that's very much the case. And when you get into what people call factories, that a lot of the kids are there to play football, and everything else is secondary in their lives. And some of them come from the other thing that people don't understand is a lot of these kids come from like the toughest backgrounds you can imagine. I was talking to a college coach a couple days ago, and he was telling me a story about one of his a kid that Georgia Tech actually recruited. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to out him. Basically, it was a Bryce Gowdy situation, like a kid that's living in his car with his like mom and living in extended stay hotels. And I had lamented the guy that the kid was kind of hard to deal with and stuff on our end. And the guy goes, "Oh, you have no idea what's going on really behind the scenes." And so when you come from a broken life, a lot of people don't have, the parents, people teaching them how to respect other human beings, how to behave. People are getting intoxicated and making poor decisions. They maybe don't have the respect for women they should have. All of those things can come into play. So that's not, and there's plenty of guys at Georgia Tech that have done stupid things that are regular student body. So I don't think that you I'm not a huge fan of painting that broad brush of that stuff, but when you see like the armed robbery and like some of the really insane stuff, like and I don't think they've had that at Georgia anytime recently, but they've had it at some other schools. When you see like one, like I think it was Auburn had one, like that's the stuff where you're like, this is insane and like scary, and clearly something was really wrong. You think development slouched off when Revenue left? Revenue left this past season, so he's been gone for 9 months, 8 months, something like that. He left in the summer, so that would be hard to have the development go off. And he really did work with just the big guys. Like I don't know, I don't think that would have an impact on why Debo and Miles Kelly are struggling to shoot. Who's the strongest new assistant that Key is higher, recruiting wise and coaching wise? Um, that's going to be an interesting question. That's something Russell and I were going to probably figure out over the next couple months. I would say, Marco definitely on paper as a recruiter was really impressive. What he did very quickly, like learning on the job. Right, Marco Coleman was not like some dude that had 10 years of experience as a college assistant. He jumped into Georgia Tech. It was his first college job and recruited his butt off. And he doesn't get maybe the same love that other people did because he's kind of very to himself with all this stuff and not as out there with even like people like us. And just goes about and does his job. So I think that, I think he's going to be a really strong recruiter, in the X's and O's department. The other one that's a really strong recruiter apparently is Kevin Shearer. I've heard a lot about him. It'll be interesting to see with guys like Buster and Crawford and McKenzie, who are guys that I haven't followed their careers, to see what they're like on the recruiting trail. From an X's and O's thing, I think Jason Seymour is a guy that like everyone's really, him and Thacker seem to be like really sharp guys when it comes to the X's and O's stuff. And that's why Brett kept both of them around. Yeah, kids are definitely kids. That's for sure. I think you could get line and quarterback play next year. Do you think 8 wins are possible? I think it really depends on how the schedule stacks up. Obviously, we'll get into that next week when it drops. Um, opening with Louisville is going to be a complete wild card, and then you got the FCS game, and then pull up the schedule. That'll help me because I can't even. The thing now, man, is I can't even like visualize who they play anymore because the Coastal's gone. So obviously the first three games are tough because you have Louisville, and then you have their FCS game, and then you have at Ole Miss, who's going to be a tough game, and then probably an ACC game, and then Bowling Green. If you get out of that 3-2, then maybe 8 wins you're talking about. I don't know. Depends on what Clemson and Carolina and Miami, like how they are. I think all three of them have an opportunity to be decent programs. Carolina obviously has a lot of talent, Drake May, and Miami's always loaded. You're playing down there in the lovely Hard Rock Stadium, which is literally the worst ACC stadium in the country. They got the trip to Virginia where Georgia Tech never wins. BC, Cuse, and Wake are all probably going to be down relative to where they've been the last few years. BC's a little bit of a wild card because I don't know. That guy's coaching for his job a little bit. Apparently, their AD, from what I gathered, may have been like considering looking around a little bit this last offseason. So it'll be interesting. GT wins. If GT wins 7+ games, they land top 25 class. I don't know. I don't know that they're going to sign enough guys to get to the. So our math works. It's 20+ signees for high school kids. So if you're talking about the high school rankings, we're gonna, I think, have combined rankings at some point. I think they're gonna do them after signing day. So it'll be interesting. They may be like hand compiled like basketball. Like I literally have no idea. But when they factor in transfers, that's where it's going to get real interesting. I'm curious to see what that looks like, that metric looks like. I really like Brian Baker hire. He was a Leary guy and was really respected by his players. Great pickup. Yeah, I think that I really like the idea of that, and that you're going to have guys who maybe don't want to go on the road and recruit anymore, have all this wealth of experience and teaching ability, but maybe they just don't want to spend 80 days a year on the road or whatever it is. Like, or just, the other thing too is like having guys that are able to relate to kids, and it's a different thing. That's why I have Russell working for me. It is a different animal than it was 10 years ago when I was closer in age to these young people. I have no idea, what the rapper is they're talking when they quote like lyrics or something. You think it's something they're saying. The stuff that you guys get hung up on sometimes on the website, like all of those things Russell picks up on because he's a younger guy. And I don't have the energy to study or learn that. So I think that it makes a lot of sense to bring in some older guys to be teachers. Baker obviously was Marco's coach too. So I think it's cool to have that relationship there as well. BC's AD is the old Miami AD. Hafley did a great job the first year. Not sure how the talent has changed, and Jerkovic was hurt. Yeah, they went from being like this team. Boston College went from being a team that was going to be like everyone thought would be a top half ACC program, and then they kind of went in the toilet last year. It's interesting. I don't know. I was a little bit surprised how well they played that first year with Hafley, but they definitely kind of leveled back off. And you had Syracuse really took a dive last year too. You have Wake Forest post Hartman. What does that look like? Clausen always has them competitive. You got to go up there. When is that game? What is it? How far into the season? All those things could play a factor in that too as well. Let's see if we got anything else. I keep hearing that Brent Key knows what kind of offense he wants to run to be successful at Georgia Tech. What does that even mean? It doesn't like we're striving to be a 40-point a game offense, but rather a team that squeaks by every week like we're playing for a bunt. It's definitely not trying to play for a bunt, right? What it means is you want to be able to impose your will on opposing teams and run the football and have a dynamic passing game and have balance to be able to move the football. I think that people don't, like, everyone thinks it's like a spread. You got to be tempo, or you got to be this or that or whatever. Or if you're running Michigan system that's from like 20 years ago, it's not any of the, like, you can be multiple. And I think most teams are multiple nowadays. I don't know that you have your air raid teams, but even those, like, very wildly, TCU's version of the air raid is completely different than Mike Leach's in terms of having a run emphasis, and what they were doing is so much different than having a running quarterback, right? So there's 1,000 ways to cut the apple up and get the fruit. It's just, Brent has a style of play. I'm sure he wants a hard-nosed, tough team. That was Georgia Tech's bread and butter for really until Jeff took over. I mean, Paul Johnson's teams were like that. They'd punch you in the face. Like, O'Leary's team certainly played, hard. Like, they were great defensively. The offense would grind it out. I think people have PTSD or something from how bad the offense were at times with Chan, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can play multiple different ways. You don't have to run one thing to win. Paul Johnson ran his thing to win. You run your defense, whatever it is, to win. But offensively, you have some things as long as you have an identity. And I think they lacked identity the last few years. So that was, I think, the biggest thing to me when I watched the offense. And maybe this dovetails back to basketball right now. When I watched Georgia Tech's offense for the first 3 years, I couldn't tell you what they did well, like what their bread and butter was, the thing they could lean on to get yards in a game and move the football, right? It was a different thing each week. I'm wondering if you lose that confidence, what it's like. I think that might be what you're seeing with the men's basketball team, guys losing some confidence. And for each night, it's been like one guy can shoot and then everyone else is stone cold. So the Clemson game was Davon Smith, which was like the worst guy for them to have hot because he's not a prolific scorer, and he got stone cold in the second half, was 0 for 4. The night before, Debo Coleman goes off and no one else does anything. They have two guys. They have two guys that shoot well. The basketball team will win. I haven't heard a confirmed answer yet. Will Pyron be able to play in the spring? If so, what do Key and Faulkner and Winkie look for to number one between? So this is a question about the number one quarterback battle between Zach Pyron and Haynes King, and you throw Zach Gibson in. I would be surprised how much Pyron plays. I don't know. I think the plan was for him to be ready like around the time of the spring. I don't think they're going to go, and they're not doing the spring in like St. Patrick's Day, like spring game, like last year. So he's got more time. But I know they're not going to rush him. I think he was working on throwing. So I haven't asked about Zach's rehab. I just know he's working really hard. He would like to be back for the spring. I'll leave it at that. That's, maybe for Zach to answer. Any last things, and we'll wrap this up. Make sure you guys smash the like wherever it is, up, down, wherever. Subscribe. Helps my metrics, and this is another potential revenue stream for the site. So I appreciate you guys jumping on this. And yeah, thanks, guys. Let me double check and make sure no one asked anything else before I jump. All right, I think we're good. Get ready for Duke on Saturday. Yay. The analyst can now be on the field, correct? I don't know if that's been ratified yet. It's expected to be. That was the last I heard. So, all right, thanks everybody. We'll see you probably next Monday after the schedule gets dropped. I'll come on here and talk about it.